Welcome back to another episode of Summer is Coming. This is episode 12, and I'm your host, Tiny Grimes, and I'm joined by Neil, the real deal, Mr. Top 4. How you doing, Neil?
I'm doing very well. Excited to be back talking about some more Thrones. And what have you been doing since we last talked with Thrones? How's it been going?
It's been going good. Getting the new pack has been so much fun. I know you guys have all had it forever, but I just got my hands on it, and so I went through and I built the army stuff, right? I was like, oh my
Ooh.
goodness, Muster of the Realms, unbelievable. And then I played like 10 games with it, never drew an army ever in 10 games somehow, and said, you know what, it might be too early for the armies. But it's fun. I tried
Did
it.
you remember to put armies in your deck?
So this is kind of funny. No. The answer is actually no. I only had 6. I even put Wildling Hordes in, but then I
Hmm.
went through when I finally was like, I give up. I went through and I'm like, only one drowned man. Odd choice. Okay. So I only had 6 armies. But still, even if I had 8 or 9, the problem with armies is they're pricey, and you really
Yeah.
want to have 9, 4, and 5 cost slots as armies that aren't that good just for that plot. I'm not sure that you do right now.
Yeah, that's a pretty tough ask for your deck construction. I feel like you would really have to cut a lot of the big splashy characters, which,
Exactly.
depending on the faction, might not be worth it.
Yeah, and I didn't want to. It's basically a Balon deck. It's like a Balon, Asha, Theon deck that just had armies in there to give it more two claim plots. And then I just realized, what am I doing? This is unnecessary. I don't need this stuff. How about yourself,
Yeah.
Neil?
I've been doing well playing a little bit of everything. I've been trying to get Tyrell to work in
Hmm.
different instances, and I just can't get them to work for me as a main faction.
Oh, the main faction. Yeah.
Yeah, I really want to try and, make use of their very cool locations, but
Mm-hmm.
I think that there's just so much stealth running around that they can't really deal with that, even though they have giant dudes. So that's been a little frustrating for me, but still a lot of fun.
Yeah, Tyrell's that faction where I feel like I almost said that they have the best cards, but I think that's Lannister. That just has like amazing
Yeah.
cards when you just look through and be like, oh my god, this guy's amazing, this guy's amazing. But just for whatever reason, I agree that they seem like, I don't know, I'm having a hard time building them as well. I love them as a supporting house, but as a main
Hmm.
house, I don't know. I look at them like these locations are great. If you can get the whatever her name is, the old decrepit
Queen of
queen,
Thorns.
Queen of Thorns. Yeah, I don't think her name's the old decrepit queen. Queen of
No,
Thorns.
she's far from that.
If you get her working, she's amazing. Randy's amazing if you get him working, but he's really expensive, and it's just, I don't know. Maybe it's just finding the right banner for them.
Maybe.
I've been playing a ton of Greyjoy. I mean, I gotta say,
Uh-huh.
we talked about this last week that I thought they were the big winners coming out of the pack, and so knowing me, I have gravitated towards that house, really trying to figure out what's the best build for them. And when I was doing the armies, I was pretty convinced it was Lannister because you get Tyrion, you get a Jaime or two, maybe you get a Widow's Wail, you get 3 awesome armies you can ambush in. That sounded insane to me.
Yeah.
Um, but then as I've gone through, I decided that was a little bit too expensive. It wasn't really fitting into what I was trying to do with them. And I've actually switched over to Stark so that I could have
Hmm.
3 Aryas, who's bonkers at 3 cost, 3 Brands. You got a Hand's Judgment sitting on the table? Like that. You know why? Dracarys, all kinds of Tears of Lys. None of these stuff hit you anymore. And then you get stuff like, what else did I put in there? Yeah, I don't remember now. So it's Sansa. Sansa's another power grabber. So if you're playing
Sure.
sort of a power grabby deck, you have Arya stealthing to turn on stuff like Great Kraken. You have Sansa just standing and getting power, and Bran making it so your guys don't die. I don't know. It seems promising to me. I've been very happy with it. I haven't lost yet since I switched over to that archetype. But having said that, I haven't played against what I fear most, which is one of those like Game of Thrones into Varys into removing all your icons for and basically stalling the game for 4 turns. Whereas usually I've won by turn 4, right? So I'm really interested to see how this deck will match up against like a hardcore Gaston Gray, just control everything, daring me to win kind of deck.
Yeah, that's always an interesting matchup when you have such an aggressive deck against such a controlling deck.
Exactly.
Um, yeah, I don't know if such a controlling deck really exists in the meta right now, at least in our meta.
Yeah, I mean, it's that interesting thing of, right, like there's a new pack, and whenever there's a new pack, people just build crazy stuff, right? So no
Hmm.
one is like, I'm gonna net deck Sam's deck and just bring that. Like that's just not what people are doing in our meta right now.
Well, a lot of people were doing that before the pack release.
Exactly, right. But now that the pack's out, people just aren't doing that because they're trying other things, right? They've already
Hmm.
tried that.
Yeah.
And most have failed, right? Because Sam's deck is not easy to play. You know, I was talking to my friend Chris about this, and he's like, I hate that deck because you can't make any errors ever. So like you in 2.0 you can make a lot of errors and still win. That
Hmm.
deck, every decision is absolutely critical. Small decisions are absolutely critical. And you make one misstep, there's just not enough firepower in the deck to overcome that. There's not enough draw. There's not enough utility in that deck. You only get 3 fires out of Gas and Gray. Even if you see all 3, you probably only get 1 fire out of it. And so you have to be super careful and calculating about every single thing. One misstep and you're dead. And that's really hard for my friend Chris is a very experienced player. He's struggling with that. Now imagine the new players who are just like, hey, I need a good deck. I'm gonna net deck the world champion deck. Yeah, it
Yeah.
doesn't go that well actually.
No, it's definitely very interesting, and so yeah, the deck that I've been having success with recently is I've been playing Stark Banner of the Sun, bringing
Mm.
in some Martell cards to try and shore up some of Stark's weaknesses.
I was playing that as well last week. It went very poorly for me. How did it go for you?
It's been winning all of the games that I play it, I think.
Hmm.
Yeah, you just start establishing a solid board presence, and it's worked well.
So my deck has won all its games. Your deck has won all its games. We'll be right
Yeah.
back, listeners. We're doing the grudge match. 10 seconds later. I just won. I just beat Neil. No problem.
What?
Neil doesn't even know what's happening. I was joking, making a claim that we paused the podcast and then we matched our decks up and I beat you. But you seem to. All right, so your deck's been good. What's made it different from the other attempts you've made with Stark or with Martell in the past? What do you feel like has caused it to be good? Is it something from the new pack? Is it just how you've put this deck together, or is it how you're playing it? What's made it so good?
I think that it's a combination of things. From the new pack is definitely helpful with the Maester plot, getting to grab either the Stark Maester or usually the Martell Maester, who provides a real roadblock to opponents who want to try and beat you in intrigue.
Yeah.
I think that the combination of that and also just playing it differently with a more focus on Rob rather than Ned,
Mm-hmm.
and getting Greywind to kill off my own guys to trigger Rob. That's been
Oh,
pretty
I like that.
brutal against a couple of opponents.
That's really neat play. I like that idea. The other thing is you can kill Bastard's daughter with that guy just to discard a card if you want. I'm not sure that would be worth it though because it doesn't stand guys from Rob.
Yeah, I'm not even running Bastard's Daughter in
Gotcha.
the deck.
Are you using confinement?
Yeah, definitely. I
Okay.
think that that's a must include if you're including some Martell. It's just a very flexible, good event that can help you out, especially against stuff like Greyjoy if they have a rampaging Asha.
Yeah, I totally agree. I was playing against or talking to somebody about their deck yesterday, I think, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm using Martell as the banner." I said, "Oh, really?" And I was like, "Yeah, but I'm not using confinement." I was like, "Are you nuts? Why are you using Martell then? What is the card that's so amazing in Martell if you're not using confinement?"
Yeah.
So yeah,
Sun Spear is also a pretty clutch card when it comes out,
yeah,
really threatening to increase your claim, and then you have the other start cards to increase your claim
yeah.
further.
Winter's
So,
Coming plus Sun Spear is pretty scary.
hmm oh
Oh,
yeah.
sounds good. Sounds like a promising deck for sure. Do you have 0 Neds in the deck, or are you just moving away from focusing on Ned?
I have one or two Neds in the deck, so that he's. I haven't even seen him in any of my games, but I've definitely moved away from focusing on him.
Yeah, I think I would probably take him out, just so having that
I've
many
thought
big
about it,
drops.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love this idea, and that's the first thing I tried to do with a new pack was rob 3 of. When you get him, you just maester plot to give him draw, right? So now he's got renown, draw, stands all your guys. That's probably the best 6 drop in the game when he has all of that together. And it's pretty easy once you find him. You just go get Lewin. So
Yeah.
I think that's really promising. So that's interesting. I look forward to playing against you soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other new decks you've been trying out that you really liked or didn't like?
Um, I've been kicking around a Night's Watch no agenda deck
Mm,
that I like pretty well. I think it's my best version of Night's Watch so far. I think
gotcha.
it has a positive win rate.
That's the funniest thing I've ever heard. It's my best version so far. It's actually won more than it's lost.
Yeah, I think so. I
Oh,
can't really remember because I've been tweaking it for a while, so I can't remember all of the matches I've played with it and
sure.
how it's been. But I feel like it's won most of its matches. It won last night,
Okay.
so
Cool. Yeah, I've been tweaking a deck as well. It's a new deck. It's called Baratheon Fealty. Yeah. Now the big changes I made though, I went up to 3 Davos because if Greyjoy stealth is going to be everywhere, you just need to have that guy that can't be stealthed. So the theory is you kneel Balon every single turn, and then you have a stealth guy to stop that stealth military, so they can't just go military unopposed kill Bob.
yeah.
And then I put in, I think, an extra bodyguard as well. So I've tweaked the deck a little bit, moving it to be a little bit more character heavy. I think it's up to 31 characters now instead of
Ooh.
29. I know, major changes. I changed 3 whole cards in the deck. Woo!
Yeah.
But yeah, I changed some plots though, which we'll get to in a bit because
Mm-hmm.
we're about to talk about some plots.
Yeah.
All right.
So this episode we are going to focus on plots and plot deck construction because plots are really kind of the heart and soul of Game of Thrones and what separate it from most other card games and are I think the coolest and most important part of the entire game.
Hmm. I agree. I mean, I feel like plots. So now that I've played Game of Thrones, when I play a new game that doesn't have a plot deck, which is every game,
Yeah.
I'm always like, you know what would make this game better? A plot deck. Why doesn't this game have a plot deck? It's just such an amazing innovation. I can't believe FFG hasn't just said, like, listen, we have gold here. All of our games from now on out have a separate resource deck because it's so brilliant.
Yeah.
I agree. I think it's what separates the game. I know the first time I played the game, I was like, wait. I get to control my own resources and they have different effects and I choose them? And people are like, yeah. I was like, that's brilliant. So, yeah, I agree. It's what separates the game. It's what makes it amazing. And it's so critical. Watching new players play plots and choose their plots really shows you the skill gap in this game and how
Mhm.
important it is to both choose them and when to play them. And a lot of times I'll even stop new players and say, like, okay, wait. I realize you think this plot is good here, but let's talk about this and why you think it's good here because from my perspective, is not the best choice here, and maybe you have a better choice. And I think that can be helpful for a new player. But let's talk about some plots. So let's start with talking about this. I was going to lead this with, hey, Neil, let's talk about which plots are viable. And I was going through the list. And you know what I've noticed, Neil?
What?
Almost all of them are viable.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, it's
Yeah.
really impressive.
It's really well designed at the moment. I think that, yeah, almost any plot could be, depending on your deck, a reasonable inclusion. There's definitely no real stinkers. Um, it's a great place for the game to be in, and hopefully it'll only improve from there. Where I want to start is just where you always start. At what point in your deck construction process do you think you build a plot deck?
Yeah, I mean, this is a really interesting question because my mentor is John Bruno. And for those of you who are new to 2.0 and don't know who John Bruno is, he's a legend, right? He won multiple titles. He's won at the beginning of the game. He went into a coma forever, came out of it, and won another world championship. The guy is a god of Game of Thrones, plain and simple. And what he's told me, and he's told you the same thing, is something that I don't entirely agree with, but I know what he's getting at, is the plot deck is the most important part of your deck. Everything else is built to interact with the plot deck because plots are the most important part. Therefore, what would he say? What would he say, Neil? What would his answer be?
John Bruno once told me that he always builds his plot deck first before he builds the rest of the deck. And while I
Exactly.
haven't been able to emulate that, it really kind of flipped a switch for me in realizing, like, yeah, the plot deck shouldn't just be an afterthought of, like,
Yeah,
oh, I guess I'll put this in to be able to play these awesome cards I built, but it really should be a focus of your deck of
exactly.
how am I going to use every single plot and every single opportunity to give myself the biggest advantage.
Yeah, and there are some decks where I've actually done exactly that, and I've built a plot deck. Like there's just been some cool, interesting plots that I was like, man, this plot just seems so good in the right deck. So
Hmm.
rather than building a deck and seeing if this plot fits, I'm actually going to build this really cool plot deck and see if there's a deck that fits this plot deck. Now, that is not how I normally build decks. I don't think that's how John normally builds them either. I don't think that's what he means. What he means is you have an archetype in mind, right? You know the card pool well enough that you say, this is going to be a Stark murder deck. And then you build the plot deck. And then figure out, okay, what are the plots I need for a Stark murder deck? And then you already kind of know what goes in a Stark murder deck. And then from there, you're sort of going back and forth and saying, like, I'm choosing these cards. They interact well with these plots. These plots interact well with these cards, rather than what you said of building a Stark murder deck and then going, I guess it wants two claimers. I'll take this one and that one, and I'm going to need some gold, so I'll take this. I think that's how most people build plot decks. You build your deck, and then you figure out what do I need from my plot deck, and I think that's reasonable as well. Um, but you have to be synergistic with it, right? You can't just, like you said, make it an afterthought. You really have to be careful in figuring out. There's a lot, for me personally, there's a lot of gold curving that happens. Like, okay, how many cards do I need high gold for? I don't need a high gold plot every turn. Well, that would be great in Magical Christmas Land. I don't
Hmm.
actually need that. So what I need to figure out is how many do I need? Do I need one or do I need two? If I need more than two, probably my deck is poorly constructed, right? You shouldn't need three, four, five plots where you're like, well, if I don't hit five gold every turn, I just can't win this game. You probably need to rethink your deck at that point.
Yes, that's a good place to start. I think getting into more specifics is how many econ plots do you feel you usually need in a deck? And you were saying one to two.
Yeah.
I'm a firm believer that you need at least two economic focused plots in a plot deck.
I think it
For,
depends on your
for most,
curve.
as with any statement like this, I
Yeah.
think that it certainly depends on the deck.
Yeah.
There are
Right.
going to be
If
a lot of decks that are crazy and different and have a very specific strategy, but I think
right.
by and large, you want two economic
Yeah.
plots in your plot deck.
That's what I tend to go with. This new Greyjoy deck I built has one. It has Noble Cause, but then it has almost all the rest are four gold. So to me, an economic plot is five or higher because there are a number of those, and the reason
Yeah.
being that there are a number of characters in 2.0 that cost six or seven or five that you want to play, and if you only have four golds ever, and you have a 6-cost guy in your deck, you're in trouble, right? There's going to be games where you just don't draw any income, and you have 3 copies of Balon Greyjoy in your hand, and you never get to play him, and those are sad days. So for me personally, I always want one plot that plays the card I need to play. And I save that plot. So for instance, in my Greyjoy deck, you will not see me open with Noble Cause if I don't have Balon in my hand. I just won't do that. I'll say, okay, this is Balon's plot. It is waiting for him unless I get a bunch of gold on the board, and then I get to be more flexible. But that's the plan I have going in with the synergy of the draw deck and the plot deck. They work together that way. And then after that, you decide, like, do I have multiple guys like that? Do I have, Balon, Euron, and then I banner to Stark, and I have Ned also. So I want all 3 of these big guys. Well, then you need a minimum of 2 big gold plots. You probably need 2, you want your Noble Cause, so you have a potential of 7, and then you probably want something like Calm Over Westeros to give you 5 more, or Calling the Banners to maybe get 6 or 7. Calling the Banners, let's get real specific. Calling the Banners is really underrated, I think. It is such a fantastic plot because you can sometimes play it turn 1 and get 5 gold out of it, but you can use it later as a reasonable initiative plot with a ton of gold on it. I think that plot is really a remarkable plot for what you were saying of like needing an income plot that does a little something also.
Yeah, so my general thought process is that in most of my normal decks, I'll be running a Noble Cause and Calling the Banners because I am a huge proponent of Calling the Banners. I think it's one of the best plots because you can get huge amounts of gold. It has the good initiative. It also somewhat avoids naval superiority. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I prefer running 2 economic plots. If I built a deck where, Balon is my go-to guy, and I only have the 1 plot that can play him, if I somehow get screwed out of my gold that turn, and or he gets killed or something, that this is part of my thinking with my Targ deck, why I was running both Calling the Banners and Noble Cause. If like Dany got killed or heads on spiked or something, and then I had to replay her or play Khal Drogo, you need, I think, 2 opportunities just in case something goes wrong.
I agree. Let's look at the income plots right now and talk about sort of rank
what
them.
we would consider income plots.
There's a number of plots I consider income plots. The first one we'll look at is Taxation. It's a 5/6/1, and it says you may marshal or play 1 additional limited card this round. I think this was pretty popular at first because if you can put out 2 gold locations or a money lender in this on the first turn, it's pretty strong. But I haven't seen many people playing it, and I tend to rate it low on my list of income plots. What about you, Neil?
I never really play it. The only time I would consider it is if I was doing Lannister and had a bunch of moneylenders plus all of the normal limited cards. But even then, I usually just cut back on a few of my limited cards so that it's still at a reasonable number. Taxation is fine, but to me, it is part of the great plot debate of stats versus abilities. To me, this is a plot with great stats and almost no ability.
Yeah, I agree. And it's not that great stat-wise, right? Like, it would be. If Calling the Banners didn't exist, and if some other plots didn't exist, then this plot would be amazing and everyone would run it. So it's kind of that thing of if you want 4 resource plots, you're probably playing Taxation. If you don't, then you probably don't want that. I'm going to bring up Calling the Banners. We didn't bring that up yet. Well, this might not work, actually. I don't know what the problem is. Alrighty. This is ugly. Yeah, I don't. This isn't gonna work. All right, I'm gonna have to go back to Card Game TV. Let me write down that I need to edit this part.
Sure.
That's weird. Okay. Jeez. That's so ugly. Okay, maybe this will work. Right. What the hell?
What is with technology today?
Yeah. Hold on. Plots. It's all you, Neil. You've infected me.
You're welcome.
Your Skype infected my computer. I tried to call it. Alright, let's see if that worked. There we go. This looks like it's gonna work. Oh, that's a problem. Okay, let me bring up that calling the banners. Boop. Okay, we ready?
Sure.
Okay, yeah, so taxation, it has a problem, like you said, the text isn't as good. When you look at something like calling the banners, it's the same kind of plot, the same stats, but the money is so much higher, right? Like, the lowest you would ever get is 5. You're not going to play this. You know, if your opponent has less than 2 guys on the board, you win, right? Like, you're crushing them anyway. Especially since Wildfire only reduces to 3. If there was a Valor in the game, it's a little bit different then, right? It's like, well, maybe there was a point where the board was Valored, and so now I get kind of killed by calling the banners. It's not going to happen. They're always going to have 3. They probably have 4. You can wait till they have 5. It's an easy way to get mid-game about 8 gold, or 7, 8 gold. What is your general gold, since you said you usually play this plot? What do you usually get?
I usually play it when they have 4 to 6 characters on the board. 3 to 6 characters on the board, I
Sure.
would say.
Yeah, so that's amazing.
Yeah. I played it last night where they had 6 characters on the board, and I had 2 gold roads. So I had 11 gold that turn.
A 961 plot. It's a good plot. That's a good plot. I feel like it took the community a little while to catch up to how good this plot is, but now I feel like like you said, it's your go-to gold plot. I feel like it's really moving up. It really makes a plot like not reinforcements. What's the name of the plot where it's like a 961 or something?
It is.
It's the one I never used. So I don't
Where
remember
did
the
it
name.
go? It is marching orders.
Marching orders. There we go. So marching orders, when the game first came out, it was like, okay, if I need a ton of gold, like just piles of it, I'm going to play marching orders. But marching orders is a pretty terrible plot. You're really restricted in locations. Oftentimes, if you have a lot of gold, you probably have an expensive location you need to play also with your guys. And then it takes out the surprise effect of any sort of events. So Targ, whether they have Dracarys or not, they want to bluff it, right? You always want to bluff that card. Any Intrigue deck wants to bluff Tears of List. Baratheon wants to bluff Ours is the Fury and Seen in the Flames. Like, whether or not you have them is irrelevant. You want to be able to bluff them, and this takes away all of the interesting part of challenges. Your opponent just looks at you and goes, so you got nothing. Awesome. I'll just do these challenges and win them. And you're like,
The other thing that's really turned me off from this plot, because I was trying it for a little bit in Night's Watch, is that it has a reserve of 4.
I didn't even see that.
Yeah, and usually you
tough.
can just ignore reserve because it's
Right.
rare to have much more than 6 or 7 cards, which is the average reserve. But
Sure.
4, especially if you're trying to do it early game, can really hurt you.
Yeah, and
Um,
it makes you
it was a
overplay the board.
Yeah, it was a plot that I just kept having in my deck and getting to the seventh plot or not even there and being like, oh, I guess I still have this. I guess I have to play it now.
Yeah.
There hasn't been a good spot for it, but
Yeah, I agree. I just think there's better income plots. The other income plot that everyone seems to like a lot for good reason is Calm Over Westeros, because not only is it an income plot, it's what I want to shift into next, which is I'm a firm believer in my plots have to do stuff, and this is something I got from Bruno. Bruno always told me just having a 2 claim plot or an extra gold, that's irrelevant. You want your plots to do work for you. You get 7 of them. You choose them carefully. You get to choose when you play them. Make them do something. Don't make them just, oh, I got a gold. Whoa, right? How are you going to outplay your opponent with 1 more gold? You're going to outplay them with cool effects. And so a plot like Calm Over Westeros bridges this, and I think it's why it's so popular. You get to thwart whatever your opponent's plan is for 1 turn, and you get 5 gold. So it's a really strong plot. Whenever I'm looking for a money plot, I tend to put Calling the Banners third. I have Noble Cause is the one I almost always play because I just need to have that 7 gold for that 1 big guy. And then if I want another money plot, I normally go to Calm because it gives me such a good effect, depending on the deck. If I'm a really aggressive deck, I tend not to play Calm because I'm looking to be the one pushing. But in any
right.
sort of control deck, I always want to have Calm.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's always one that's on the edge for me of inclusion. It's interesting, all of this beginning to really dig deep into how we want plots that have at least decent stats, especially economy plots, but also do something like Calm. It makes me wonder if a Noble Cause is even that much better than something like Calling the Banners, that at least has um, a little bit of use against naval superiority. It has a ton of initiative. I'm wondering now if a Noble Cause is overrated.
I think right now in the current meta, Noble Cost is really good depending on what you want to do. If you want to play a big drop turn 1, it's really critical. Now the problem is, I feel like at this current stage, people aren't really playing naval superiority. But I think by the time Store Championships and Regionals comes around, and all the best minds in the game are all in on 2.0, which they are now, I think the tech for these events is going to be naval superiority. And the people that are still on Noble Cause are going to get blown out of the water. And this is another reason why Calm is so awesome as an opener. You get 5 gold, it doesn't get touched by naval superiority, and when you get 5 gold and your opponent gets 2, you have a huge lead. If they miss on naval turn 1, they are in huge trouble. And so I think the tech for those events is going to be naval superiority, and I think the counter tech is going to be Calm. And so I think you're right. I think right now, I don't think Noble Cause is overrated, but I think it's dangerous. I think it's a very dangerous plot to play. But getting 7 gold turn 1 for that giant noble you want to play, it's hard for a deck like Targ or a deck like Baratheon or a deck like Greyjoy to say, no, it's cool. It's cool. I'll take 5, draw Dany, and not play her. It's fine. I'm totally fine with that approach. I don't need Dany.
Yeah.
I'm Targ. Right? It's hard to have that mentality. And Noble Cause fixes all your problems.
Yeah.
All right. So speaking of plots that do stuff, so I love plots that do stuff. So probably my favorite plot in the game, which I am not running in my Greyjoy deck, by the way, is Filthy Accusations. I feel like in a game where they're pushing you to play giant, huge dudes and spend all your resources on one guy, Filthy is so good. It gives you pretty good income. You get to knock out their best guy for a turn. It is a really strong plot.
Yeah, I think that this moves us into the realm of plots that affect the board state, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah.
And I think that these include things like Filthy, like Confiscation.
Yes.
I'd even lump in things like March to the Wall and Wildfire in
Mm,
sort of the same way. Wildfire sort of starts bordering on a different territory, but
yeah.
I think that these are some of the plots that can have the biggest effects on the game when
Yeah.
revealed, that automatically just instantly change the board state in some way.
hmm I agree. I mean, I have a friend who doesn't play Milk anymore. He says, here's what
Really?
Milk does. For one turn, you get to make a guy still attack. He still does everything he could do. He just doesn't have his ability for one turn, and then they play Confiscation. So what exactly did I gain? Nothing.
Yeah, sometimes that one turn is enough though, and
Yeah.
sometimes you'll get lucky and draw other milks, and then
Yeah.
you get to have one stick.
Yeah, exactly. That's where that whole mentality falls apart a little bit. I'm still on the almost every deck has Confiscation. My Greyjoy deck, I said, you know what? I'm gonna get crazy. I'm not putting it in because I have 3 sows. And then I'm like, Seastone Chair, Seastone Chair. Okay, Confiscation's back. because I want to be able to kill the bodyguard with Confiscation and then kill the
Mm.
dude with Seastone Chair.
Yeah,
Um,
I don't run Confiscation in Night's Watch just because the vast majority of their units have no
yeah,
attachments.
yep, and
And
that makes
even the
sense.
ones they can milk, I'm sad, but it's not the end of the world. But otherwise, yeah, it's a one of in every plot deck right now, I think.
Yep. So another plot kind of like this that has a really good utility is Here to Serve.
Hmm.
Here to Serve is really strong in being able to put out a Maester for it's usually going to be 3 cost and then getting 3 gold. So it's kind of what we were talking about before. It's both, right? It's a 6 gold plot essentially in which you get to choose one of the guys that you're playing out of your deck. That is really strong, and moving forward, it's going to get stronger with every single pack. So this plot in 1.0 was everywhere, and I see that happening again.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so the two sort of other big categories of plots that I think are important to talk about are two claim plots,
Yep.
or I guess more than one claim plots,
Yeah.
and search plots. I think that Here to Serve is sort of the first example of a search plot,
Sure.
but then the two big ones to really talk about are summons and building orders.
Yeah. Let's start with summon. So when the first time I saw summons coming out of 1.0, I said, "What? It's not even limit 1?" Every single deck, every deck will have 2 summons. So basically what you're going to do is 2 summons, 1 wildfire, and everyone then has a 4 card plot deck after that. That's how good I was thinking summons was coming out of 1.0. And then the funny thing is, 2.0 hit, I started playing that Baratheon deck, and I just wanted plots that did things. I didn't even have a summons in that deck forever.
Yeah.
And I didn't put a summons in any deck. And now I'm back to every single deck has a summons because why wouldn't you? It's great post wildfire. It's great to help you find that one guy you need. Summons is just amazing. And remember, in 1.0, this was a 2-sided plot. It was so good. You both got to
Hmm.
get a guy. And in 2.0, you only get 2? That just seems crazy to me still. Every time I look
Yeah.
at it, I'm like, what? Is this
I
a
agree.
misprint?
Coming from 1.0, though, the one-sided searches are just seem crazy,
Yeah.
so strong. But I've actually come away from summons a little bit, depending on the deck that I'm playing.
Yeah.
It just the zero initiative can be a real detriment, and it sort of goes back to how ideally you want plots that do things. And while I mean it is a big effect, it's a sort of delayed effect where you
Yeah.
still hopefully find the character you're looking for, then hopefully have the gold to play it,
Yep.
then you get to actually do something sort of with your plot indirectly.
Right. And if you don't
Same
have
with
to
the
go to
building
play it,
orders.
they may pull it with intrigue. And then
Yeah.
you basically got nothing from your plot except for losing the character that you would have drawn later in the game when you had gold to play it. So yeah, I agree. It has to, if it's in the right deck, and you need to play it wisely. Like
Hmm.
what I tend to do is I started playing counting coppers in some decks, and then I said, you know what's better than counting coppers is summons. Right? I can, instead of getting like, I'm in that spot, I'm like, oh no, I'm running out of cards and I need guys on the board. Why don't I just get an awesome guy and put that on the board instead of getting 3 random cards, which could be better, but quite often I was finding was worse. It was like, okay, I got an event I can't use, a money location, and a chump. Well, I'm still dead. Right? I needed
Hmm.
an impactful character right now to stabilize or to push the win. And I feel like summons is really good for that.
Interesting. I've been playing more Counting Coppers recently. I've been finding I like the 3 card draw
Mm,
to sort of dig through the deck. And I guess I've been playing decks with slightly lower curves that are less
right.
like focused on the big 7 cost or 6 cost characters. So
Yeah.
with those sorts of decks, drawing 3 cards can really help you out, get a couple of, decent warm bodies on the board rather than here's my big combo guy who's gonna break the
Yeah.
world.
Yeah. That's what I really love about Game of Thrones and plot choices, right? There is no one plot deck, right? Like if I told you this is
No.
the best plot deck, I would be wrong. I would be dead wrong because every deck is different. I love that you said that because you're right. I've been playing this Greyjoy deck that's very much like I want the stealth guys. And there's a pecking order even. Like I'd like this guy first, then this guy, then this guy. And then even just 2 chumps after that is fine. Like just Balon by himself can swing for 7 power in a turn. That's
Yeah.
bonkers. But in your deck, more of a weenie deck, yeah, counting coppers is great. Just here's a couple of weenies. Bloop. All right, get through them to get to the wall. Oh, you couldn't. Oh, I'm so surprised. Yeah, I really like that. That they both serve a different purpose. And the search plot I hadn't seen anybody play ever in 2.0 is building orders. Have you seen anyone play building orders?
I play building orders all the time. Building
Well,
orders
all
is
right then.
great. Yeah.
Yeah, because you go get the
Building
wall with it,
orders
right?
is really fantastic. You can go get the wall if you're playing something like Martell. You can get Sunspear or Gaston Grey.
Sure.
Even if you're playing something that has okay locations that you're maybe looking for, you can grab economy if you're like, man, I don't have another economy plot,
Yeah.
but I can try and find a King's Road.
Yep.
And that will boost this to, a 6 gold plot. Or even, I really got to get my milk here. Let me
Sure.
search for an attachment. Let me get this milk of the poppy. Let me get this Heartsbane.
Long claw.
Longclaw. I think
Sure.
that building orders is really great, and 7 reserve is kind of nice.
Mm.
And having more than 0 initiative, I really like building orders.
Yeah, I don't generally. I want a plot that does something more for me. Having said that, though, it's in my Greyjoy deck because I have
Mhm.
16 locations. 6 of
Yeah.
them are Great Kraken and Seastone Chair, and if I get those, the whole game changes the second one of those hits the board. And so
Oh yeah.
I will sometimes open with building orders. Like if I don't have Balon in my hand, the next card I usually open with is building orders because I don't want to open with summons because then I get Balon and I can't play him anyway. So I'll open with building orders, just throw down a Seastone Chair and be like, boom. Whole game's different, isn't it? You can't play Game of Thrones anymore. You now have to play, oh dear God, don't win an unopposed military. It's a whole different game.
Yeah.
And so I've been finding it can be a really strong turn 1 play. However, I will say, when you whiff with this, when you try to take that huge tempo swing turn 1, and you end up getting a Rose Road, whew, it's painful. It's
Yeah.
real painful.
Yeah, that's true. That's true of pretty much any of the search or draw plots, but
I
this
feel
one
like Summons isn't
think
quite like that, though. Because there's so many, at least reasonably impactful cards in your deck that I'm going to just say this, and it's a huge jinx, I know. I haven't played a Summons yet where I just was like, I'll take the Reducer guy. Like, that just hasn't happened to me yet.
I've seen that. I was talking to someone last night who had had like 2 games in a row or was running 2 summons, and the best they could do was like a reducer on one and like a tumblestone knight on the other.
Okay, that's a
It
problem.
can happen.
That is a problem. Yeah. Okay, so what we haven't talked about is initiative. And I feel like coming out of 1.0, I wasn't that worried about initiative. It's like you go first, you go second. It's usually okay either way, unless you're a big two-claim murder kill deck with some really big effects. Sometimes you want to go first, or if you're Martell and every one of their cards says go second or else. But in 2.0, it feels like, and I'm going to see what you think, you always want to go second. You just always, always, always want to go second. And I hate making statements like that because they sound much too black and white. But that's just what I've been finding. Like, even in Greyjoy, I'm like, well, I could get 2+2 for my pumps, or only +1 and get to go second. I'll take second.
I don't know. I think that generally, yes, you want to go second, but when I've been playing against Greyjoy, I've found it more useful to go first, especially if they have a board set up, I think is the main thing. I was playing against someone who had gotten out Theon and Asha and maybe Balon, so I'm like, I have to go first, or they just stealth and kill my entire board.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I think that there's also many times when you want to close out a game and you're like, okay, sure. I'm just going to go first. Yes. I win this power challenge. Yeah. I win.
I totally agree with that one. It's funny because I was thinking specifically of Greyjoy, that you want to go second against them so that you'll have guys up so they can't stealth through everyone. But if they already have it set up where you're not going to be able to block all the stealth, then yeah, that's a different game.
Yeah. So I think that by and large, generally, you want to try and go second. And so initiative can be a pretty important consideration when you're building a plot deck. When you're making a plot deck, what do you pay attention to most, the stats or the abilities?
Oh boy, it's really hard. I try to balance them all. I mean, that's what it comes down to.
Yeah.
What I generally do, I'll just talk about some general. We'll circle back to some general rules. So I generally look for a couple income plots, and if I can get better stats on them and I can get better abilities, awesome. I'll find the best abilities stat plot I can for the particular deck I'm running. Right, that's where I'll start first. If I don't have to run Noble Cause, I won't. But if I have huge 6 and 7 guys, I feel like I have to have it. After that, I try to find, unless a deck really, really wants to claim, and we'll get back to this in a minute, I try not to use 2-claim plots because the stats and the abilities on them are terrible.
Interesting.
So I generally do not use 2-claim plots because they don't do enough. I would much rather have a plot like Filthy Accusations or Power Behind the Throne so I can stand a guy. I feel like standing a guy back up is way better than one more claim. Generally speaking in this game, military claim means you're killing their chuds. Every now and then you can string together some ridiculous play where you get 2 claim and then you get Winter is Coming and something else happens and you ice a guy. Sure, in those scenarios, a 2-claim plot can be great. But generally speaking, killing 2 chuds versus standing a guy a second time it's just not as good to kill 2 chuds. That's been how I've found it to be. So I tend to play plots that do cool things over 2-claim. Now I will say, for instance, my Greyjoy deck, which is trying to be a rush deck, I want to claim a lot of power. There are plots in the game that are set up where you don't have to have a 2-claim plot and still do good stuff, like Muster to the Realm, or my very favorite plot right now, that I can't remember the name of it. There we go. A Clash of Kings. This plot has good gold at 4, amazing initiative at 9, and is essentially a 2-claim plot if you're a power rush deck.
Right. So I would say that and Muster the Realm are pseudo 2-claim plots. They're basically 2-claim plots.
But they're not 2-claim plots because it's a very limited to what your deck is trying to do, right? It's only for power, and in many spots, that's pointless. You can't do this turn 1 and be like, yep, I'm going to take control of this game turn 1. I'm going to play Clash of Kings, right? It's much more of a mid-game closer plot than a typical 2-claim plot. Like a 2-claim plot, you can just play whenever and be like, oh, their hand's getting low. Boom, 2-claim, nuke it. Their board's getting light. Boom, 2-claim, nuke their board. These plots that we're talking about are much more skill-based and trying to take advantage of their effects in a prime spot with a deck, rather than just saying, like, it's 2-claim, I'm ready to go. And so my point is, I tend to shy away from traditional 2-claim plots because they tend to be weaker than these more skill-based, deck-specific 2-ish claim plots. Those are the plots I like.
Yeah, a few comments on what you just said. I think that deck-based is the more proper term for the pseudo 2-claim plots you're talking about, because I think that running a more vanilla 2-claim plot is actually much more of a sort of pro play.
Okay.
It's much more of a tactical sort of advantage where you can, like you said, decide which challenge you need that to claim on, or which challenge is, rather than a strategic decision of, my deck is going to be going for power, so I only need these plots that work to claim for power. I personally, when I'm making a deck, always, if I can afford it, try and fit in a 2-claim plot.
Gotcha.
It usually ends up being Sneak Attack. To me, out of the core set, that's the better of the 2-claim plot options than Winds of Winter, because it also gives you a little boost in your economy, and you get that initiative to really decide if you're closing it out and doing a 2-claim power, you get to go first, or if you're trying to go second, wait and see what they do, then spring on whatever icon you can really screw them over with.
Yeah, and I like Sneak Attack pretty well late game. So I started playing some Sneak Attack in some decks, and I really don't like the card that much. I feel like when you try to play it turn 1, which a lot of people do, right? They get a board state and they say, bam, I'm going to Sneak Attack. I think there's just too many opportunities for that not to work. All your opponent has to do is play Calm Over Westeros, and now it's a 1-claim, big deal. They play Game of Thrones, and you don't have intrigue icons, and you're like, well, okay. And I just feel like there's a lot of chances for this card to backfire. I really like the design of it a lot. I tend to not play cards that can backfire really badly by my opponent just playing reasonably well, right? Like, if they have to play incredibly well to make it backfire, that's one thing. But they just, like, I don't know. I feel like it's a dangerous plot to play, and you're really all in, right? You're all in on your opponent just being like, all right, I don't have an answer for that. And it
I mean, if you're playing it first turn, but I usually play it mid to late game as just a boost to my economy, and it's pure stats. This plot is the plot of pure stats. It has better than average income, the best initiative, and 2-claim. So to me, that's worth a slot a lot of times.
Yeah, and I can agree with that. It for me, it's often not, because of what I was saying, that I want a plot that does something, right? That impacts the board, it controls the board, it does something to the board. This does not. This just basically says, I'm going to punch you in the face really, really hard, and I might punch you so hard, that's it. You can't get up from the mat. But I generally shy away from plots like that. Having said that, I am running a plot that's even better than that plot. Rise of the Kraken, it's just bananas.
Yeah, I mean, that card is really, really, really strong. Yeah. And hopefully as we get all of the other factions' plots, they will be equally good in their own unique and beautiful ways.
Right. So, and the funny thing is, I don't consider this a 2-claim plot. Like, it is, right? It's obviously a 2-claim plot. But the reason you would run this is because in Greyjoy, you're winning piles of unopposed challenges. So it's not just a 2-claim plot. It's like a 3-claim plot for power, and it just grabs you all this power. And so it basically satisfies both of what I'm talking about, right? It impacts the board greatly with its ability. They have to play completely differently to make sure on that turn you do not win unopposed. And then at the same time, you're getting 2 claims. So you're much more likely to push through your 2-claim because they have to play in a crazy way just to not let you have unopposed. And so plots like that, like to me, this is the gold standard of what an amazing plot is. Yeah, it's low on the gold, but it's a late game plot, right? It's not a
Hmm.
turn 2 plot. It's a turn 4 plot, a turn 3 plot if you think you can win that turn. Stuff like that.
Yeah. So my last kind of overall question on plots that I think we should talk about is coming from 1.0, this is kind of new territory. With 2.0, you can include up to 2 of the same plot in your plot deck.
Yeah.
How have you been finding this, and do you think that you should strive to do that in every plot deck?
Yeah, that's such a hard question. I mean,
I
we've
know.
been debating that ever since it came out. I mean, like the question that was framed to me was, are you just an idiot if you don't have 2? Have you just not know how
Mhm.
your deck operates, right? Like if you have a plan for your deck, then you should have the 2 best you should have 2 copies of the plot that best fits that deck's plan. Like that's a pretty obvious statement. However, in a lot of my decks I don't do that, right?
Yeah, I
I
don't either.
Bear Fealty was easy. Bear Fealty wants to kneel all your stuff. Bam, 2 filthy, done.
Yeah.
For instance, my Greyjoy deck, I don't because I like to have options. I want to look through my plot deck and say, what is the best plot for this spot? Now, if you're going to give me 2 Rise of the Krakens, I'm going to take 2 Rise of the Krakens. But obviously, that's not at my disposal. But after that, I want to have options. I want to have a board wipe in case things go bad in Wildfire. I want to have confiscation in case there's an attachment I can't get rid of. I want a summons. I want a building orders. I need 2 money plots. I could do 2 noble causes, but as we talked about, noble cause is a pretty serious downside. So 1 is probably enough, and then I'll take a different money plot that maybe isn't as hit as bad by naval superiority, or both gives me money and impacts the game. And so for me, I think usually I've only done one of all the plots.
Yeah, I found the same thing that I think about running 2 of a plot and it just never quite works the way I want to. You want those options.
Yeah.
It's really hard to commit that hard to a game plan of like a third of the turns of this game, essentially,
Right.
if you're going 6, 7 plots, are going to be this one ability.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it's really hard to justify that. I did it for a little while with Night's Watch. I was doing double March to the Wall. It was cool sometimes. I've seen some people trying to do double Muster the Realm with the armies.
That's the one that I think will definitely be a 2 of. Once there's enough armies and you make an army deck and that's your plan, I think that is a 2 of. Like that to me
Yeah.
is a definite 2 of. Like that's what my deck is built around. It's a flex 2 claim plot. That plot's amazing.
And then we look at, I'm pretty sure Sam's World Championship deck was running double summons,
Yeah. That's,
which,
I mean, that's what I predicted. I predicted every deck would run double summons, and I was dead wrong, except for on the best deck at the event. I was
yeah.
right on that. So that's really interesting. There are a couple plots that I want to run 2 ofs. And every time I think about like building a deck around it, I'm like, all right, I'm gonna run 2 of a Game of Thrones. It's gonna be awesome. And then I look and I'm like, wait, what? It's limit 1.
Yeah.
What the? Okay, all right, no, okay, I'll go a different approach. I'll just play like vanilla guys and blank all their guys, and I'll play 2, 4, or 5 position. Wait, what? That's limit 1. So it seems like the FFG has actually done a good job of like, what are the plots you want to run 2 of? You can't. The only one
Yeah.
is filthy. I think that also should be a limit 1 as well. But they've done a really good job of saying like, the decks you could build a whole deck around this and be abusive. No, you can't do that. You get that one time. And so I think that's part of it, that FFG has thwarted me in this idea that you want to run 2 ofs.
Hmm. Yeah. So it's definitely a tough and interesting choice figuring out your plot deck. What other thoughts do we have on this key component of Game of Thrones 2.0?
Um, So one thing I often do is it's hard for me to get down to a 7 card plot deck a lot of time, and I'll be at 8 or 9. And so, and I think we've talked about this in the past. I think a really important thing to do with a plot deck is to play games thinking about these other 2 plots and where would I play this plot? How good would it have been if I had had it? And what plots are not as good as I thought they were going to be? Do I not actually need as much gold as I thought I had? As I needed? Do I not need that 2 claimer that I thought I was going to need? Because I always like to have a 2 claimer as sort of that, like, take 1 turn where I just have a really good play. Did I not need Filthy in this deck, right? It's not Bear of Fealty. Yes, kneeling that 1 guy that 1 turn was cool, but would it have been better to do something different on that turn? Is that kneeling a guy 1 time really that important for this deck? Things like that. There's oftentimes plots that look like they're going to be great, and then when you get in the game, they're just not as good as you thought. And it's better to just not say like, oh, well, that didn't work out. It's better to be thinking like, well, what's the alternative going in? Like going into this game, what am I thinking about as a possibility? And I know in this Greyjoy deck I've been messing with, the plots have changed a lot. Only about 3 plots are what they were when I started. It's like Noble Cause, Kraken, and Clash of Kings. I think those are the... Oh, and Wildfire. So I had 4 in there. The other 3 have switched 3 times already, where I've just been thinking like, well, this is theoretically going to be really good. You know, I don't need Winds of Winter actually in this deck. It's a power grab deck, but I don't actually need another 2-claimer. I need something that does something. I want my locations quicker. I want a guy quicker. I need more cards. I need some utility here. Those are better. Or this. My deck gets crushed. There's 1 turn I need to win with, and it keeps getting crushed by Stealth or Kneel that turn. Wait, why don't I just run Fortified Position? Just one of them, so I can neutralize that 1 turn. You know, for my deck it wouldn't work, but perhaps for your wall deck, it seems like that's a good inclusion as a one of that maybe you don't think about at first. But as you're playing, I know it's hard to know every plot in the game, right, Neil? But have at least a couple in mind, like these maybe would work. And then the next time you play, you think of a couple more and try to figure out if those would work. You don't necessarily have to have them in the deck, but be thinking about them.
Yeah, you could even have a couple of ones you're thinking about off to the side if they're not in other decks, and just look at them in a casual game to not play them, but just look at them. I've also heard some people trying and suggesting a way to help figure out what a good plot deck is if you're doing a very casual game, play with all of the plots as your plot deck, so that each turn you just choose which one would work best. And then after a couple of games, you'll see like, yeah, I was playing Noble Cause turn 1 or 2 every game. That's definitely in my deck.
Yeah. And I think that gets to another discussion that we need to have another day, which is there's actually a difference between training games and winning games. Like, it's really important to do training games where you just say, listen, we're going to play this one well. Like, if you miss a trigger, I'm not going to let you miss a trigger. If you're about to make a ridiculous play, we're going to talk about it. And I'm going to tell you why I think it's a ridiculous play. And you can still make it if you really want to, but we're going to do a training game. And we're going to have crazy things where events we can sub in. Like, okay, I'm torn between these 2 events. Let's see what would have happened if I had had a treachery here to cancel your Varys that I don't have. Would I auto win? Would I still lose? Like, how important was Varys to this board situation? Like, there are a number of things you can do like that, and I think Plots is a really great one, especially if you're newer to 2.0. It's such a good way to get to know some of the plots. Like, there's going to be plots you've never even thought about, never even looked at, and then you're going to be playing a game and go, wait, oh my goodness, rebuilding, that's the one! Like, you've never even pulled it out of your binder before. And now suddenly you're playing it in a practice game, and suddenly you realize that's the linchpin of the whole deck. And it really can change the way you think about the game, having access to all the plots. I think that is a great idea. I haven't done that before myself.
Yeah, me neither.
But I think it's a great idea. For me, it's more like every now and then I'll say, hey, can I use this plot instead? But I always feel bad because I'm usually the more experienced player, and it feels bad to the less experienced player when they're like, whoa, you're kicking my ass already. You've beaten me the last 3 times. Now, mid-game, You want to choose a plot from your binder. Really? You're like, you know what? Never mind. That's my bad.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
won't do
it
that.
comes off a little harsh mid game, which is why
Yeah.
you should definitely discuss it with your opponent beforehand.
Exactly. Discuss it
And
with them ahead of time, and they'll probably be fine with it.
yeah,
So Neil, let's summarize with this. For me, when I'm building a plot deck, my number one goal is to try to have all plots that do something for me. Now, I usually can't do that. I usually need a money plot. I usually need some sort of closer plot. What about you, Neil? What is your overriding theme when you're building a deck?
I think my overriding theme is to try and have an option or an answer uh for every possibility. Which usually you can't do.
I was just
And
about to say that. How many plots do you have in this deck, Neil?
no, exactly, but like having two income plots so that you have a fallback, having a two claim plot so that you can really hit them hard one turn, having confiscation, having enough different plots that maybe they aren't used the same way each game. Maybe you don't need them some games, but that's kind of the ideal that I always shoot for, is like I'll always have an option of something to do. I hate when I look at my plot deck and I'm like,
Yeah.
none of these plots, like these plots are all okay here, but
Right.
there's not like a clear, yeah, this is going to be an awesome plot this turn.
I think that's the main reason I put summons in my deck, is that helps with that a lot. Like if there's ever a turn when you're like, you know what, none of these plots really do anything. You're like, well, I mean, I guess I can get a guy. Like that's
Yeah.
something. Wildfire's probably on the horizon. I'll just save him in my hand, and then that's one more guy that I'll have. But so I definitely agree with that. But it sounds to me kind of like you have a plot deck that you generally are using then with what you were saying. Are there, say, 5 plots that go in most of your decks?
I think that I'll at least start with about 5 plots in most of my
Okay,
decks.
what are those plots? Let me see if I can guess them.
Okay.
They are Noble Cause, Calling the Banners, Wildfire, Confiscation, Sneak Attack.
Yeah. That's pretty much it.
All right, and then basically the other 2 are tailored to the deck.
Usually one of them is some sort of draw plot, whether it's counting coppers, summons, building orders. And
Sure.
then the other one is usually some sort of do something plot. Like maybe filthy, maybe heads on spikes, maybe march to the wall, just some other when revealed kind of gotcha sort of
Sure.
plot is generally where I start with my plot deck, but
Right.
depending on the deck, it'll morph from there.
So you're here to hear first, folks. If you're ever playing Neil, you already know his plot deck. Um, I would say I've fallen into patterns as well that I've been breaking out of lately. My pattern was Noble Cause, Calm Over Westeros, A Filthy, Confiscation, Wildfire.
Summons.
No, I wasn't playing Summons forever. So those 5 I had in every deck. I mean, every single deck. I would just be
Yeah.
like, those 5. And then what do I want as the last 2? Oh, no, actually, and Power Behind the Throne. Because when Baratheon was really strong.
right,
So I
yeah.
actually had 6 plots that I would start with. And I wouldn't necessarily keep them all. Like, if it was a really aggressive deck, I'd say, okay, which of these plots can I afford to lose? But those are the plots I would just take out, put it in a pile, and say, here's the start of my plot deck. Now let's go from there. And I've started breaking away from that as Baratheon's really receded a bit with the new pack. I don't know if they actually are, but they are in our meta for now.
Right.
I've taken out Power Behind the Throne. Calm has turned into more of a, what is that plot I need? Is it better to have Calling the Banners? Is it better to have Calm? People aren't playing Naval Superiority right now anyway, so Calm isn't quite as good as it'll be in the future.
Yeah.
And I've tried to branch out as much as I can to get to know some other plots, but it's hard. You fall into that trap of like, these are good plots, and I'm just going to use them. I've had success with them in every deck. They're powerful. I know them well. I know the situations they get used in. So it is important to branch out, even if you have your 7 plots that you play every deck. Try to purposely build a deck that doesn't use those plots, right?
Yeah.
Build a deck that's built around Game of Thrones and controlling the board and really controlling plots, and see how that works out for you, just to get to know them.
Makes sense.
All right, Neil. I think it's time for a quiz. What do
Yeah.
you think, Neil? Do we have a quiz in us?
Yeah, I think we gotta.
It's got to be a plot today. That's the plot twist. Ooh,
That's what I was thinking as well.
that's gonna be hard. I feel like I've seen you play with every plot.
I definitely haven't.
You more than me. Although I
Yeah.
feel like I know all the plots now, so then you're gonna stop me and look like an idiot because I don't know the Martell one, and it's not in this list I'm looking at. All right, I'm gonna choose for you. I'm gonna choose Rebuilding. I'm sure you know this because I think I've seen you play it, but
Yeah,
what
I
is
did
it?
play Rebuilding a little bit. Rebuilding is a kingdom plot.
It is.
It is a 5 gold, 5 initiative, 1 claim
Mm-hmm.
with, I think, 6 reserve.
Yep.
And it says, when revealed, choose up to 3 cards in your discard and shuffle them back into your deck.
So were you just reading the plot, or what's going on here?
No, I used to play the plot in
Targ?
Targaryen for a little while.
Yeah.
The idea being, hopefully I draw my Dracarys and my cool events early,
Yep.
use them, shuffle them back in, and the threat is right back in there that, oh, I drew it again.
Yeah. I think it's an interesting approach.
I think that once we get more draw cards, it'll probably be a better plot because you'll be able to see more of your deck and
It's also kind of flexible. You could play it as just a turn 1 gold plot if you need to, or turn 2 gold plot. Like it does work. If it was a 3/5/1, I think it would be totally unplayable. If it was a 5/0/1, I think it would be not that good. At 5/5 though, that's really strong stats for a plot with a reasonable ability. I'm kind of surprised actually that nobody plays this that I've seen.
it just does. It's such a delayed effect. It's almost blank.
Yeah, like Gaston Gray, Confinement. Like, these are really strong cards to be able to loop back into your deck.
Yeah.
I think it's going to become better, especially in Targ, as we have more burn effects.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I've seen 2 Dracarys in this other burn. I feel fairly safe. He just shuffled them all back in. Well, that is problematic. Or if we get a tutor for events, then it'll be disgusting.
Yeah. Then it'll be pretty crazy.
All right, Neil, what do you have for me?
I have a Feast for Crows.
Okay. A Feast for Crows is, I think, 5 gold. It's probably not. It's probably 4 because 5 sounds like too much. What?
It is not 5 gold.
Yeah, so we're going to go with 4.
Nope.
No?
No.
Is it 6?
It is 6.
Wow. I might have to start playing this card, actually. All right, so it's 6 gold. What's it, like 4 initiative?
Nope.
I have no idea. What is it?
1.
Whoa, okay. And that's 1 claim.
Mm-hmm.
And it says if you win dominance, you get... It's either 2 or 3 power. I'm going to go with 2.
Yeah, you gain 2
2
power
extra.
in addition to dominance.
Yeah, okay. So, 6 gold. Boy,
Yeah.
I've never run this card before, but is it a kingdom or an edict?
It is an edict.
Ah, okay. If it was not, I would say as the meta adapts, this could be a really interesting card because it could both be an opener in a naval superiority deck environment or a closer depending on what you need it for. But it's an edict, and so suddenly my interest in this plot just plummeted.
The other, what's the reserve on it?
6?
It's 4.
What? So it's definitely a
Yeah.
closer plot. Okay.
Yeah, so it's really just a closer plot. Limit 1 per plot deck.
Okay.
I've been really tempted to put this into like a Night's Watch deck or maybe even a Stark deck that's trying to get a lot of power. I'm just not sure though. It feels risky.
Yeah, it's really all in.
Yeah.
Because late game, you probably don't need 6 gold. And so it's like, is there a better plot? Would just Winds of Winter be better?
Or even taking the chance on like Heads on Spikes, which can get you the 2 power,
Sure.
but immediately,
Yeah.
rather than your opponent getting an entire marshaling and challenges phase to counteract your obvious bid for power.
One
don't
more
know.
card I want to talk about.
Mhm.
We were talking about two claimers. We didn't talk about Storm of Swords, which is a really interesting plot. That it's like a two claimer in that, but it does two militaries, and I think these are really interesting. I'm just a little surprised that this was a 381. This feels like it should be a 4 to me, with how 2.0 plots are costed and statted. Because all the
Yeah.
other ones like this are 4 gold, and this 3 gold is so prohibitive that I tried it once in a deck and I have not gone back to it.
It's a card that feels very all in,
Yeah.
because it feels like either you just decimate their board because you get an additional military. So maybe you're even playing Buddy Cops and you have Drogo out and you get 3 military claim, 3
Yeah.
military challenges, and you just get to wreck them. Or they have defenses up, and having 2 separate military challenges won't really do anything for you. It's
pretty taxing on you.
barely push one through.
Yeah, and even if you push them both through and it takes all your guys to do it, and they kill 2 chuds and swing back with 3 challenges, you still lost that round. Like that was
Yeah.
not a good round for you. So yeah, I agree. I just wanted to bring that card up because I think it exemplifies some of the sort of trap cards, right? That this looks like it's amazing, and this is the kind of card that you want to be thinking about for your deck, but not necessarily start with. Maybe it turns out that this is the right card for your deck. Maybe, like you said,
Yeah.
you're running Buddy Cop, and that's exactly what you need. Maybe you're running a deck that triggers off of winning military challenges. That could be good as well. Put to the swords. Now you can
Yeah.
do 2 of them in a turn.
Or doing the Stark armies where you have a war plot where now your armies are non-kneeling for both of your military.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be really strong. That was a huge blowout thing you could do in 1.0. There were these Stark decks that were just like all in military machines. And if you couldn't stop them, they just on turn 1 they just be like, "Oh, your stuff is dead." And you're like, "Ah." But then half the time you're like, "I just counter everything you did and you lose." Like, "Yep, I guess that happened." Okay, cool. All right, Neil. I think that's going to wrap it up for today. Thanks so much for stopping by. I think I had a lot of fun talking about plots. How about you, Neil? Do you think we did a good job here?
I think that we did a good job scratching the surface. Plots are the most interesting, important part of the game, so I'm sure you will hear much, much more on them from us in future episodes.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I'm going to do an interview with John Bruno that just goes like this. "Hey, John, what do you think about plots?" And then I won't say anything else. I'll nod my head approvingly and say, yeah, John, I agree with that. And I think that'll be the best one we've done.
Yeah, I look forward to that one.
All right, Neil. We'll see you all next time on Summer is Coming.
Bye.